Okay, yesterday we left off Yom Kippur, Shachris Mincha, okay, Shachris and Mincha. Okay, so now, after Mincha, you go home, you have Suda Mafsekes. We said some people have a minute to go to mikveh again after Suda Mafsekes. It's also a minute for the fathers to bless his children before Kol Nidrei. It's interesting. Some parents do it every Friday before Shabbos. They bless their children, but officially the minhag is you do it on Erev Yom Kippur. From the time the Rebbe became Rebbe, the Rebbe used to come out right before Kol Nidrei. He was already wearing his talis and his kittel, and he used to be when the crowd was small. Only the Bochrim after Mincha. I'm going to explain something. The way it worked, Erev Yom Kippur, let me just tell you a day in New York, Erev Yom Kippur. Erev Yom Kippur, it was one of the few times the Rebbe used to daven Shachris with the minyan. Normally the Rebbe didn't daven Shachris with the minyan. Very few, in the later years, after Memches, the Rebbe davened every time Shachris with the minyan. But Erev Yom Kippur was one of the few times the Rebbe would daven Shachris with the minyan. So he came early to 770, he did Kapparis, then he went to the mikveh, and then they daven Shachris. After Shachris, the Rebbe gave out Lekach for a long period of time. Then, after Mincha, it'll be downstairs in the big shul. After the Rebbe gave out, all the tzedakah we learned in the various different pushkas, the Rebbe would, after Mincha, go up and give a bracha to the world. Later on, it used to be mamash a half a minute bracha. Hashem should help, Then it became a whole sicha. And at the end, the Rebbe would say a bracha. Then the Rebbe went home, whatever. But before Yom Kippur, right before Kol Nidrei, the Rebbe would come out from his room. And originally, in the early years of the Rebbe's leadership, it was in Gan Eden Atachni, the room right outside the Rebbe's room. And then it moved into the Zal in 770, into the upstairs 770. As the years went on, it was mobbed. The biggest, even bigger than Tkiyas, the biggest pushing that existed in 770 for the year was the bracha to the Bochrim Erev Yom Kippur. Now, before Tavshim Memches, because after the Rebbe passed away, the Rebbe would bench licht, because he had to bench like Shabbos candles. But until Tavshim Memches, the Rebbe would actually speak into a microphone. And then more people outside were able to hear it. Because the Rebbe would put his talis over his head. The guys in front were able to see a little bit under the talis. But like this, the Rebbe put the talis over his head, and we start with Yivarechecha, and he would give the Bachim a bracha. After Memches, because the Rebbe already ben shlich, there was no microphone, there was no tapes, there was nothing. And the Rebbe, I wasn't there already. I left in my last year there was Lamed Ches. But I was married in Lamed Vav, so Lamed Vav was my last year. Tavshin Lamed Vav was my last year by the bracha, and it was an unbelievable sight. I can just tell you from personal experience. I used to be almost in the front because I had my big cousins that protected me. That would be, I would be in the front, but we were so wet. After Yom Kippur davening at night, after Tilim, we were still sopping wet from the bracha Erev Yom Kippur right before Kol Nidrei. You're talking about hours and hours later, we were still sopping wet. But anyway, then straight from there, the Rebbe would go down to Kol Nidrei. Okay, it's also a minhag that you light a lebedike licht and an neshamalech for Yisker, even though normally Chabad custom is we don't light a candle for normal days of Yisker. But for Yom Kippur we do, and then you light a lebedike licht. It's called a living licht. So officially you're supposed to put it in the shul. In this shul you can't put it because we're going to get closed down. So you light it in your houses. And then you come to Kol Nidrei, okay? Now, the minhag is, in Ashkenazic circles, you wear a kittel on Yom Kippur. In fact, Chabad has another, not only Chabad, Ger also I think has that minhag. Chabad custom is, like in most normal Jews, The Chazan and Rosh Hashanah, Shachris, Musaf wears a kittel. The guy that blows shofar wears a kittel. The guy that lanes sometimes wears a kittel. In Chabad, the only time we wear a kittel is on Yom Kippur. That's it. And by a chasana. By a person's wedding, they wear a kittel. In fact, it said, our minig is, that a chasan that wore a kittel at his wedding does not wear a kittel the first Yom Kippur after he's married. Because he already wore the kittel on his Yom Kippur, which was the day he got married. So Chabad doesn't wear a kittel, but otherwise, in our customs, Ashkenazic Jews, we wear a kittel. Why do we wear a kittel? Because a kittel reminds us of the shrouds that they bury us in. So it's basically like a wake-up call, besides the fact of purity, and white is purity, but it's also made primarily because of its the big day mesim, and therefore we wear a kittel. Now the custom is, even though a kittel is basically a shmata, it's basically a piece of cloth. When you finish the kittel, you can throw it out. If it rips, you don't have to bury it. Same thing with a gartel. A gartel has absolutely no kedusha to it. When a gartel is ripped or whatever, you can throw it into the garbage. There's no holiness at all in a kittel or a kittel, in a gartel or a kittel. Nevertheless, the custom is, and it's brought down in Shulchan Aruch also, that you don't go into a bathroom wearing a kittel. Wearing a gartel. The whole year, you don't wear a gartel when you go, even though there's no kedusha. You wear your tzitzis in the bathroom, not a talus, but you wear your tzitzis, the talus cotton that you wear. But the reason why you don't wear a gartel in the bathroom is, it says in Shulchan Aruch, because it's a garment designated for davening. Basically, you wear a gartel only for davening. There's certain chassidim that wear a gartel a whole day. So technically, they could go into the bathroom with a gartel, because they don't only wear it for davening. One second. But our custom is we wear a gartel only by davening, and therefore our custom is you don't go into the bathroom with a gartel. Also, our minig is therefore because a kittel you basically wear during davening. Otherwise, you don't wear a kittel. So we don't go into the bathroom with the kittel either. What?
People that only wear their hats for davening also require.
No, not happening. It's not a beged for davening. This is.
Some people put it on just for davening.
Yeah, but it's out of respect. It's not. No. Some people wear a yarmulke only for davening, so they shouldn't go into the bathroom. Take off the yarmulke. Okay, you have to make sure to put on the talus. In Kippur night, we wear a talus. So you have to make sure to put it on before Shkia, before sundown. Otherwise, you can't make a bracha on the tzitzis. Because at night, you don't make a bracha on tzitzis. And after sundown is already a doubtful night. So you have to make sure that you put on your talus before sundown, that you're able to make a bracha. What?
This is before Kol Nidre or the day after?
No, the day of Kol Nidre. Before Kol Nidre, you come to shul, you put on your talus. You're wearing already your sneakers, you put on your talus, you make a bracha. And if you wear a kittel, you put on the kittel first, and then the gartel, and then the talus. Yeah, and then that's it. And then, okay, so you said the gartel is what you did. Okay, but that you put on before davening. Okay, halachically, the Rabbi brings it down, that's our custom. Right before Kol Nidre, again we confess, we do the whole alchet privately. Right before Kol Nidre, everybody says, well, those that say it. Say privately the whole alchet again. Because the truth of the matter is, it says in halacha, why do we confess Erev Yom Kippur at Mincha? We say the long alchet. Why do we do it at Mincha? What does Mincha have to do with it? So it says in halacha, the proper time for confession is when Yom Kippur starts. When Yom Kippur starts is the time to confess your sins. Why are we doing it earlier at Mincha? So the Rebbe brings in Shulchan Aruch because we're afraid, God forbid, somebody might choke when they're eating Suda Mafsekes, and they might die, and then they're not confessing before Yom Kippur starts. Therefore, it says in Shulchan Aruch, and that's our minig, that besides Mincha, the confession of Mincha, right before Kol Nidre is really the proper time for Achet. So you quietly, before Kol Nidre, you say Achet. Okay, we have the 9 Prakim of Tilim before it. Okay, and then you have Kol Nidre. Now, the concept of Kol Nidre, it's a very interesting thing. In the world, Kol Nidre is like highlight. The prayer of Kol Nidre is nothing special. Kol Nidre, basically, we're saying 2 things in Kol Nidre. Number one, we're saying any vow that I make, I will make, should be null and void, and I regret it. Okay? And then we say, which the Rebbe writes, we say quietly, Al dasa mokim, al dasa kol, b'yeshiva shomayel, b'yeshiva shomata, onu matirim l'spalad imra avroyonim. What are we saying? When you take out the Sefer Torah to Kol Nidre, besides the fact it's brought down in Halacha and in Siddur, it's the first Sefer Torah for Kol Nidre is a very, very holy thing, and it's a big mitzvah to buy the first Sefer Torah to be taken out for Kol Nidre. So really, you have the Chazan holds the Sefer Torah, and then you have technically 2 more people. In most places, you take out all the Sefer Torahs. What? I'm sorry, not the Chazan. The Chazan basically has a bezdin around him. They stand around the Chazan, actually. That's what they're supposed to be. What is the Chazan saying? And this is the important part of a Kol Nidre. Not the nullification of the vows. Yeah, that's nice. But the real thing is, with the Bezdin, the Chazan with his Bezdin, is saying, we are permitted, yeshiva shomayla, yeshiva shomata, in the heavenly court, in the earthly court, we are hereby proclaiming that you could daven with the sinners. Because the Gemara says any fast that the sinners are not included in the fast is not a fast. That is really, from a halachic, Kabbalistic perspective, the importance of Kol Nidre. The reason why Kol Nidre is important in the world, because that's when Yom Kippur begins. So that's the start of Yom Kippur. But the tefillah itself of Kol Nidre is nothing really compared to Adasa Mokum, Dasa Kol, Yeshiva Shomayel, Yeshiva Shomata, that we are allowed to daven with the sinners. That's really the main part of Kol Nidre. Okay, but that you're supposed to say, the Chazan is not supposed to say it out loud, he's supposed to say it loud enough that the Bezdin around him hears it. The 3 people that are holding the Sefer Torah. Okay, then another thing is, normally on Yom Tif, you make a Shechianu when you make Kiddush, or women when they light candles. Yom Kippur, there's no Kiddush. Right, there's no Kiddush in Yom Kippur. No, it's interesting. Even if somebody eats on Yom Kippur for health reasons, there's no Kiddush and there's no 2 chalas. The Chachamim did not establish Kiddush on Yom Kippur. There is a Rabbi Kiva Eiger that holds that when Yom Kippur falls out on Shabbos, somebody who eats has to make Kiddush because of Shabbos. But we don't pass like that, Rabbi Kiva Eiger. And halacha is you don't make Kiddush. But, by the way, somebody who eats and they bench, they say Yalla V'Yovi in the benching. But in the benching, you're not going to find a line for Yom HaKippurim, obviously. So you have to add that in the benching, but Yom HaKippurim. No, it applies to kids. You can have an 8-year-old kid that's eating, washing, or a person that needs to eat. Anyway, so the question is, when do we make the Shechianu for the Yom Tiv? So women make it when they bench licht, when they light Shabbos candles, they make the bracha. Men, after Kol Nidre, before Ma'ariv, the Chazan starts, it's in the Machzor, the Chazan starts saying, Lao, Baruch Atah Hashem, it's low, and everybody, all the men, say the bracha, and they finish before the Chazan, that they can answer Amen on the Chazan's bracha. But the women that already said it at candle lighting don't make the Shechianu again, because they already said it. Now, one more thing, I mentioned this last night in the Zoom, but I don't think too many of you were on the Zoom last night, and that is that many times women want to drive to shul or get a ride to shul, or men want to drive to shul on the night of Yom Kippur, but they bench licht. So once it's ben shlicht, it's Yom Tov already. So the halacha is, if they want, they're allowed to make a condition at the time of candle lighting, both men and women, by the way, should make a condition at the time of candle lighting that they're not accepting Yom Tov yet. But they have 10 minutes that somebody in the house or themselves have to accept Shabbos, Yom Kippur. So in other words, if somebody has a 20-minute drive to shul, it's not going to work, according to the Alter Rebbe. According to other poskim, it might work, not according to the Alter Rebbe. So they have to make sure that somebody in the house, at least, accepts Yom Tov within 10 minutes of the time the woman ben shlicht. But if the woman, let's say, has a 5-minute drive to shul, yeah, she can have in mind she's not accepting Yom Tov, drive to shul, and then comes to shul, she accepts Yom Tov. But
so if you have an 8-year-old and they're going to eat bread, they're going to say a motzi?
yeah,
So you're going to say a blessing on Yom Kippur.
yeah.
But you said that if you're going to put on your talis, you can't say the blessing. Put on
No,
your
because the talis, you don't make a bracha at night. Because talis is only daytime. But yeah, but somebody who has to eat, an adult or whatever, that has to eat on Yom Kippur and they're washing, they have to bench with Yalavi Yavi. Okay.